All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
My work is to ensure that before you ever learn about the Mayflower in 1620, you're going to learn about that ship in 1619 called the White Lion. You're going to learn about our stories of resistance, of the contributions of Black Americans, and we will not be erased from the narrative of the country that our ancestors built. And then we see why they're trying to ban our history, right? Because once you learn your history, you don't accept your place. Once you learn your history, you challenge the way the power is wielded against the vulnerable. So that's why they want to outlaw our history, because history will radicalize us. History will open our eyes. There's a reason we're the only people in the history of the United States for whom it was ever illegal to learn to read and write. Because we know, right, that education leads to liberation. And you can't keep people down who understand their history.
Almost no one talks about the ship that started it all. In August 1619, a vessel called the White Lion sailed into Point Comfort, Virginia. It was not a passenger ship. It was not a trade ship. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans, stolen from a Portuguese slave ship called the San Juan Bautista. The English colonists traded food for human beings. No law authorized it. No court approved it. It just happened, and nobody stopped it. Drop a comment if you knew about the White Lion. Follow for more American history they never taught you. Now here is what your textbook skipped. Those first Africans were not legally slaves under Virginia law because Virginia had no slave law yet. They were classified as indentured servants. Some earned their freedom. Some even owned land. But by 1662, Virginia passed a law that changed everything. Hereditary slavery. If your mother was enslaved, you were enslaved. Automatically, at birth, no trial, no appeal. One ship, one trade, one law 40 years later, and an entire system was locked in. The same legal logic, status inherited at birth, still echoes in how courts today handle citizenship, inheritance, and civil rights cases. The receipts go back to 1619. What else did they leave out of your history class? Comment below.
407 years ago this month, a ship pulled up to the Virginia coast, and America was never the same. Late August 1619, Point Comfort, Virginia. A 160-ton English privateer ship called the White Lion drops anchor. Its captain, John Colin Jope, had something to trade. 20 and odd Negroes, in the words of colonist John Rolfe, who wrote it down. 20 to 30 Africans, stolen from the Portuguese slave ship São João Bautista in the Gulf of Mexico, kidnapped originally from the kingdom of Ndongo in what is now Angola. They were traded for food and supplies, bought by Virginia's governor and a merchant named Abraham Piercy. Some were taken to Jamestown, some dispersed to plantations along the James River. 1 year before the Mayflower, this is where Black America's story in this country begins. Not 1776, not the Declaration of Independence. 1619. This is where the labor began that would clear the land, grow the crops, build the wealth, and construct the very foundations of what you were taught was a free country. The ship's name was White Lion. Remember that. Part 2 of 1619 drops Friday, and that's the one where we talk about why this matters right now. The difference between an immigrant story and an enslaved arrival is everything. Follow so you don't miss it. The Mayflower gets a holiday. The White Lion gets silence. but 20 and odd Negroes landed at Point Comfort, Virginia in late August 1619, stolen from Angola, traded for food, scattered across plantations. 1 year before Plymouth Rock. This is where America's story actually starts for Black America. Did your school ever teach you 1619?
This is the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 10, and it reads, For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching me this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashar Barazar from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. And we got this article here from EJI, which stands for Equality Justice Initiative. And we're going to be talking about, that first slave ship that appeared, August 20th, 1619, called the White Lion. But back to that scripture, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. This is talking about Esau Edom, the so-called white man who is the wicked, according to Malachi 1 and 4. All right. And, the time's at hand. We don't care what you think, Esau. You are an Esau Edom, point blank, period. All the tokens point to you, everything that you've done in history. I was just looking at, what's that, First Ezra 4 and 45, where it talks about you burning our temples. We know that there's nothing new under the sun, even though our temple, was our place of our worship back then. Look at what you did today with all the churches. The same people doing the same thing all over again. All right. That's one of your signs to let us know who you are. Just like this, this is talking about these slave ships is one of the signs to know who we are and who was involved. All right. It says, shame shall cover you. Look at you now. You're scared. You're angry because your history is coming out. Nobody sees you as the model person of the earth anymore. You are now the scum, and that includes your leaders who are pretty much running the country and own everything, all the media, all the news, all the grocery stores, in control of everything. All right. The small hats. All right. It's you, They are also of the nation of Edom, specifically from the tribe of Amalek, who's said in the scriptures, Numbers 24 and 20, would be the first of the nation, the chief nation. And you are the chief nation right now running everything. All right. But you're also the most wicked. And we know the stuff that's coming. We do. All right. You are the most wicked of all the nations. Not only did you finance the transatlantic slave trade and own the ships, you own the insurance companies as well too, and had a huge share in ownerships of slaves. All right. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get into the. It says, and you should be cut off forever. Yeah. After you all, serve slavery under us, twice as long and twice as hard as we served under you, you're going to be cut off forever. That means eliminated from existence. Thus says the scriptures. It's not my words. These are the words of the Bible. You will be eliminated from history, existence, a vapor, a memory, never to rise again on this earth. All right. In leadership. All right. Again, this is titled Traffickers Bring First Enslaved Africans to Jamestown, Virginia. All right. Again, this article is from EJI, which means Equality Justice Initiative. And I'll put a link to the article in the description box of the video. It says the stage was set for slavery in the U.S. as early as the 14th century, when Spain and Portugal began to capture Africans, which are actually Israelites. Okay. Africa is a continent, not a bloodline. You got a lot of different countries over there and all different people. All right. It says slavery eventually expanded to colonial America, where the first enslaved Africans, Israelites, were brought to the Virginia colony at Point Comfort on the James River on August 20th, 1619. It was reported that 20 and odd Negroes from the White Lion, an English ship, were sold in exchange for food. The remaining Africans or Israelites were transported to Jamestown and sold into slavery. All right. Now, again, these are the Israelites, the southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, which was Judah, Levi, and Benjamin. All right. You had some of the northern kingdoms sprinkled in there later on, but yeah, they came off of the west coast of Africa. All right. If you look at a 1747 Negro land map, it's called Wida, but there's a slave coast. All right. It's literally written on the map. All right. But this is that curse in Deuteronomy 28:68. Let me get that. This is a book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68. It says, and Yahweh Bashem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. All right. We know when we left ancient Egypt, we walked, didn't need a ship. So this Egypt here, when you go back into Exodus chapter 20, it means house of bondage, okay, which is where we have been ever since, okay. It says, and Yahweh Bashem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again, okay, bondage again, Egypt being America, okay, with ships. By the way thereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And the it is the land of Israel. All right. The people that are over there now are not the people. All right. And that's not all of the land that they have. All right. They have the headquarters as outlined in Joshua chapters 13 through 22. The whole land is from the great river Euphrates, which is the Nile. Okay. All the way over to the Euphrates. All right. They don't have all of that land. They're in conflict with those people. All right. Which proof that they are not the chosen people. All right. You're supposed to have all of that land, not just the headquarters, but you don't have it. All right. So that's the it, where it says, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, slaves, and no one shall buy you. And that word buy goes into the Hebrew word kana, which means redeem. No man shall redeem you. All right. Let's get the precept to that to let you know who was going to redeem us. Malcolm X couldn't do it. Marcus Garvey couldn't do it. Martin Luther King Jr. Couldn't do it. Black Panthers couldn't do it. All right. All of these individuals who tried to, get our freedom back, they couldn't do it. He says, no man. That's a natural man. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 47. All right. starting at verse 3. This is talking about Babylon, Edom, okay, America right now, because if as you know, all of the Israelites were not in the Babylonian captivity. It was just the southern kingdom, okay. It says, verse 3, thy nakedness shall be uncovered. You're going to be exposed. All right. Just like that opening scripture says, shame is going to cover you. Yeah, you're going to be exposed. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance and I will not meet thee as a man. Okay. Back in Deuteronomy 28:68 says, no man shall redeem you or buy you. Okay. He said, I will not meet thee as a man. That means he's coming back in all in his angelic power. That's Yahweh Shai. All right. With Michael and the rest of the angels to wreak havoc on his place and gather his people from the four winds of the earth. All right. Four corners of the earth, wherever we were scattered, his elect. Okay. Let me make that clear. Not all Israel, because 2/3 of you folks are going to die. You're going to die a horrible death. All right. Either by nuclear fire or teeth of wild beasts, famines, pestilences, any kind of way that the Lord sees fit for your judgment, because you have disrespected him and his prophets. All right. He says, I will not meet thee as a man, coming back on that large chariot. Okay. Shooting concentrated laser beams, destroying everything until this place is no more. It says verse 4, as for our Redeemer, okay, the Lord of hosts, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai of hosts, okay, is his name, the Holy One of Israel, okay? Because we see what they're doing. The IDF and the U.S. military have combined, okay? We're not ignorant of Satan's devices. That's for us, the Israelites over here in America. That's for us. For them to come down with that great wrath, as the scriptures say, the enemy's going to come in like a flood. All right. That is for because they know, both of them are from the land of Edom. They know that we're going to take them out, okay, at the hands of the Lord. They know this. They read the scriptures. That's what they're afraid of. That Israeli council, Judith Varney Shorer, she said it was the black youth of America was the biggest problem for the state of Israel. State of Israel. Let me make that point. That they were the biggest problem. We were the biggest problem for them. All right. And why is that? Well, when you look at the whole scope of that video, it's because the youth wasn't educated on their history so much. Fuck your history. We don't give a shit about that stuff. You stole ours and pretended to be us, sick bastards. We don't care about that shit. That was a short time. We're still in captivity. All right. And like you do, when you get ready to come in, the Lord said he's going to raise up that standard. Isaiah 59. All right. And we have to believe that. We don't have a military. So how are we your biggest problem? And that youth, it can go twofold as an actual young. But when we were in our youth as a nation, we were following the laws, statutes, and the commandments, especially during David and Solomon's time. All right. So you can look at that two ways. And we went away from that, which is why we're in a spot that we're in now. Okay? Scriptures say that too. You won't find those people ever in history on any photos with yokes of iron around their necks. You won't find them on slave ships. That's because they owned them. All right. This is the book of Baruch. It's in the Apocrypha. Baruch, scribe for the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 4, verse 1. All right. So you'll know that it's talking to Israel. It says, this is the book of commandments of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, and the law that endureth forever. So you Christian churches, the law is not done away with. It says, all they that keep it shall come to life, but such shall leave it shall die. And you know that you see pretty much the same thing in Deuteronomy chapter 28. You know, if we kept the law, statutes, and commandments and the ordinances, you know, we're gonna live and be blessed. All right, you went away from them. Hey, all those curses. Deuteronomy 28, chapter 15, verse 68. You know, they're going to happen, and I always bring out, you know, in those stretch of scriptures, the word shall or shout appears 113 times. It means inevitable. It must happen and must happen. Also means with absolute certainty. And those curses did come to pass. They are still here, starting to lift now. All right, and we know that. It says, turn thee, O Jacob, and take hold of it. Walk in the presence of the light thereof, that thou mayest be illuminated. All right? Have that light, have that wisdom. All right? It says, give not thine honor to another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. And that's just what John Hyrcanus says when he converted them. Those Amalekites, those Edomites, okay? When he forced them to take on our laws, statutes, and commandments, all right? And then they start calling themselves the Jewish Levi. What kind of shit is that? All right? So, you know, give not thine honor to another, nor the things that are profitable unto thee to a strange nation. You know, the Lord said, Matthew, was that 7 and 6? Give that not which is, let me just grab it so I won't butcher, and I'll come back to this. Matthew 7 and 6. In his red letter, the words of Yahushua, it says, give not that which is holy unto the dogs, which is the heathens, okay? The thing which is holy is which makes us sanctified, separate from everybody else, which is law, statutes, and commandments, okay? It says, neither cast your pearls before swine, okay? The things that are valuable, all right? It says, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again to rend you. Yeah, it took the laws, statutes, and commandments and made this shit called the Talmud. Okay? And now trying to stick it to us. All right? Again. But the Lord got a different plan for them. All right? Continue on. Back in Baruch. It says, O Israel, happy are we, for the things that are pleasing to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai are made known unto us. Okay? Law, statutes, and commandments. It says, be of good cheer, my people, the memorial of Israel. It says, ye were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because ye moved Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai to wrath, and ye were delivered unto thy enemies. For ye provoked him that made you by sacrificing unto devils and not to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. All right. That's why we went on to those slave ships to Egypt again. All right. We were sold just like it says here. All right. Back to the article. It says historians have long believed that these Africans or Israelites enslaved in the colonies came from the Caribbean, but Spanish records suggest that they were captured in Angola, which was then the Portuguese colony in West Central Africa. All right, just like I was talking about that 1747 Negro land map off the coast of West Africa. It says it's the slave coast. All right, it says while aboard the ship Sao Joao Bautista, bound from Mexico, they were stolen by two English ships. That's, Edomites. The other ones are Edomites too, but other Edomites. The White Lion and the Treasurer. Once in Virginia, the enslaved Africans were dispersed throughout the colony. It says although Virginia became the first British colony in North America to legally mandate race-based hereditary enslavement in the mid-17th century, slavery did not immediately become the predominant form of labor there. For decades, slavery was formalized. Virginia plantation owners held nearly 10 times as many indentured servants as enslaved Israelites or Africans. Okay? And many of the indentured servants were white. Now, we got to keep in mind here, indentured servants, first of all, they didn't receive any of the brutality that the Israelites received, or what they call here the Africans. Okay? And they also paid off a debt. All right? They were working off debt. Okay? That wasn't the case with us. Not only what it was a brutal, beyond humiliating. They weren't buck breaking those indentured servants. They weren't ripping their babies out from the wombs and stepping on their heads. Nowhere near the brutality. So we don't want to hear that shit. All right? Indentured servitude was nowhere close to chattel slavery. Couldn't touch it with a feather. You want to keep bringing that nonsense up. No. All right? And you got to go back home, but a lot of them were used as slave catchers, managing the fields, overseers. That's what they called them. That was part of working off your debt too. So we're not trying to hear that. It was not the same thing. All right. It says by the 1680s, however, enslaved African labor became the dominant system on Virginia farms, and the population of enslaved people continued to grow exponentially. As enslavement became a status centrally tied to race, colonial American laws and culture developed to create a narrative of racial difference that defined African people or Israelites as intellectually inferior, morally deficient, and benefiting from the civilizing influence of slavery. Yeah, right. Let me do the most horrific, humiliating things to you, and it's going to make you a better person. Yeah, right. There's something coming for that. This is book of Exodus. I believe it's 21 and 16. And it reads, and he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. This is what you so-called white people got coming. All right? And you small hats. This is what you got coming for what you did to us, what you're doing to us. Shall surely be put to death. That's scripture. All right? For all the brutality. All of that was not going to go, you will not be acquitted for that whatsoever. And yes, we have found in your hands. This is Baruch, back in the Apocrypha, chapter 3, verse 8. It says, "Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from Yahweh our power." All right. It says, "Hear, Israel, the commandments of life, give ear to understand wisdom." All right. So yeah, according to Judges 5:11, we supposed to be rehearsing the righteous acts. All right, let me grab that in the places of drawing water, which is service. Judges 5:11. Okay. It says, "They that are delivered from the noise of the archers," that's those nuclear missiles, "and the places of drawing water, servitude, here in Babylon the Great, aka Egypt, aka America." Okay. It says, "There shall they rehearse the righteous acts of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai." That's doing our best to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. All right. It says, "Even the righteous acts towards the inhabitants of his villages in Israel. Then shall the people of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai go down to the gates." All right. So yeah, that's what we're supposed to be doing over here. Rehearsing the righteous acts. The prophets out on the highways and byways, week in and week out, showing our people their transgressions and prophesying the downfall of this kingdom. That's what we're supposed to be doing right now. Prayer without ceasing, fasting. Okay. Giving honor to the Most High, all the time. Never stopping. Tell these people what's about to happen to them. Tell our people what's about to happen to them. But some of them don't listen, and we're okay with that. We're at that point. We're not begging Jake no more, man. If you can't see it now, what's about to happen in this place, we don't know what else to tell you. All right? But you can't say we didn't warn you. All right? Going back to the article. It says, "The belief system and institution spread widely over the next 2 centuries, even as the U.S. gained independence and embraced the national identity as the land of the free, not for us, not for the Israelites." All right. And that's made clear right in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution. You get to the end of it, it says, "To ourselves and our posterity." Okay. Ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Okay. Who was that talking about at the time? So-called white man. Ourselves and our posterity. Okay. That means posterity is from the progenitor of a nation. In this case, it's Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, to the furthest descendant of that nation. Has nothing to do with the people that were brought over here or the people who got naturalized citizenship via the 14th Amendment. Has absolutely nothing to do with them. All right. And it says, "At the start of the Civil War in 1861, Virginia had the largest population of enslaved black people of any state in the Confederacy." Okay. And that punk ass president, Thomas Jefferson, knew it. A lot of those presidents had slaves. But Thomas Jefferson knew at some point in time that they were going to have to pay for this. That's in his letters and his notes to Virginia, which I'll have right here. I typed in, "I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just." And it says, this line is a famous quote from Thomas Jefferson in his 1782 book, Notes on the State of Virginia. He wrote it to condemn the evil of slavery and to warn that a just God would eventually punish a nation for holding human beings in bondage. He knew that. As he knew that, he had slaves. Show you the hypocrites that they are. Okay, so yeah, you can look that up and read that letter. It says the context of the quote of the source written as a query, 18 manners in the notes on the state of Virginia. And there's a link to that. All right. It says, meaning Jefferson argued that slavery corrupted both the slave and the master, creating a system of absolute despotism. All right, let's look up that word despotism. DESPOT, despotism. Oppressive absolute power and authority exerted by a government ruled by a despot. Okay, let me look up that word, the root word, despot. A ruler with absolute power and authority. All right, that's going back to what I was saying. We were sold into our enemies for what we did. Okay, one exercising power tyrannically, a person exercising absolute power in a brutal and oppressive way. All right, so he knew this, yet he still had slaves. Damn hypocrite. All right, go back to that. Okay, it says, warning. He believed that divine justice would not let the crime of slavery go unpunished. And he's exactly right. All right. Raising the fear of a violent uprising or divine retribution. And see, that's the thing. It's not like this curse said, you know, no man, that's an ordinary man, shall buy you or redeem you. Okay. The most violent is when the Lord comes back on those chariots. Okay. To a land ruled by Edom. All right. You are going to be destroyed to no end. It's Isaiah chapter 14. Verse 21. And it reads, prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. Not only are you going to be slaughtered, okay, you will never be in rulership again. All right. As explained in verse 22, it says, for I will rise up against them, Edom, saith Yahweh Bashem Yahushai of hosts, and cut off from Babylon, America, the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith the Lord. Okay? That's the entire seed line. The entire seed line. All right? What's that? Numbers. I think it's 14:19. 14:18. All right. It says, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai is long suffering and of great mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, and by no means clearing the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generations. So yeah, you Edomites today will pay for what your Edomite ancestors did yesterday and still doing today. All right. I'll close out with this. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 13, beginning in verse 9. And it reads, If any man have an ear, let him hear. If any man have understanding, let him understand. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Who's had us in captivity? Has led us into captivity. Okay? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. Okay? Beginning with the Greeks, the Romans, and now. But even before those, in the Assyrian captivity, in the Babylonian captivity, you helped forward our affliction. Okay? In the Egyptian captivity, as we were exiting Egypt, who attacked us first? Amalek, the so-called Jewish people today. All right? And as we were on our way, Edom came out to fight us, but the Lord said, just move around. You don't have to deal with them right now. All right? Back in verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Okay? Who was the sword given to? Esau, Edom, back in Genesis 27, verses 38 through 41. He is the sword of the Lord. Okay? Psalm 17:13. All right? So yeah, just as you kill, you will be killed. All right? Ezekiel 36. I'll get that after this. It says, here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So that's what we're waiting for the Lord to give us that green light. Once he comes back, takes this place down, give us the green light to fuck y'all up, man, for what you did to us. And, it's going to be in righteousness, but it's going to be worse. Because we know you all are some weak individuals. That was prophesied too. When you were born. It says one people shall be stronger than the other. Yeah. That stronger people are the Israelites. Look at what you've done to us. And we still here. That ought to tell you something. A resilient people. You on the internet crying now for stuff that, hey, we've been dealing with forever. But it's cool though. All right. This is Ezekiel 35. Verse 5 and 6. And it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword. See, there it is. And in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end, you kept forwarding the affliction. According to Zechariah 1 and 15. You try to make it harder. All right. Verse 6, it says, therefore, as I live, saith Yahweh our power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. And why is that? Man, thought I was going to stop there. Numbers 35 and 33. It's the only way you're going to pay back. 35, 33. And it reads, so ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. And you are still shedding our blood to this day. Look at how many Jakes have been found hanging, shot for no reason by the police. Killed like that kid Nolan Wells recently. All right. He says, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. Okay? You shed our blood, now we're going to shed yours. When that time comes, and there will be nothing you can do about it. Let's prove that. This is the book of Joel, chapter 3, verses 19 through 21. It says, Egypt, there it is, house of bondage, shall be a desolation. This place is going to be destroyed. And Edom, all the lands that you were in rulership in, a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, Levi, and Benjamin, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. Just what I just read, Numbers 33. It says, but Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. Dwelling forever and dwelling from generation to generation, that's immortality. That means when we have those new bodies, we can't die. The truth will be on our inward parts. Okay? It's going to be part of our genetic fabric. We will never be able to go off again. But like it says, dwelling forever and from generation to generation. We won't be able to die. That's the immortality that we're looking for. Okay? This says, for I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed. For Yahweh Bashem Yahushai dwelleth in Zion. Okay? So, because you shared our blood will be, your blood will be shed. That's the true reparations. All right? Fuck your cheap paper. Fuck your apologies. We ain't having it. We're not having it. Only thing that matters is us coming into the kingdom and you expiring. All right. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching me this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom, Kwam Yasharala, Abad Babal. We got next. Shalom.